As we mentioned earlier, test-driven development relies on the repetition of a very short development cycle. This cycle can be broken down into three distinct steps. The first step is the RED. First, we need to write a unit test that intends to validate a new functionality. Initially, this test is always going to fail as there is no production code that fulfills this functionality. The next step is the GREEN. Here we need to write the minimum software solution in order to make our test pass. The goal here is not to develop the whole feature, but just to get the test passing as fast as possible. We should only focus on a very small bit of functionality. The last step is the blue, or otherwise called refactor. This step is often neglected, but it is essential, as it eliminates possible code duplications or any other code smells. During this phase, any dirty solution that we implemented earlier has to be refactored to match perfectly the overall system architecture. Refactor is an internal process that aims to improve the readability and maintainability of our system, but must not modify the external behavior of the program. An important thing that I want to state is that we should also spend time to refactor the testing code and not only the production code. The tests are also part of our system. If it is your first time trying to practice test-driven development, it might seem impossible to develop a real Android application by simply repeating this cycle. But that's exactly what we are going to do before we finish this course, and that's a promise. The life cycle can also be explained by the 3 rules of test-driven development introduced by Uncle Bob Martin. The first rule is that you may not write production code until you have written a failing unit test. The second rule is that you may not write more of a unit test than is sufficient to fail, and having an application not compiling is failing. And finally, the third rule is that you may not write more production code than is sufficient to pass the current failing test. So, having those 3 rules in mind, and also the test-driven development lifecycle diagram, we are going to develop a whole Android application.